I did go to Canada that year too.
Ah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Not jealous at all. It's a great race, that kind of race that year. Really been crazy
It was actually,
and stuff. Yeah.
I'm just trying to remember how Barrichello damaged his car. Didn't he? He hit Jamie Al-Ghashwari or something, didn't he? Had some sort of coming together with one of the other sort of backmarker teams. I can't remember.
What year was that?
2010. I'm just gonna.
So he was at Williams.
He was, yeah. Because I've got bits of Williams in the garage, and I'm just trying to figure out what. Yeah, I think it's. Yeah, it would have been 2010 Canada.
There we go. I've updated the description and stuff.
That's good because I don't know how to do that while the stream's still on. I'll be honest. How do you do it?
On the YouTube Studio.
Oh, all right. Oh, so you have to like go out of it and then go into. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, it's a bit of a faff, but you know,
it is. But it adds
it's
context
YouTube.
to it.
It adds context and it adds hashtags and stuff, and it's just a little bit more helpful.
We've been doing good on YouTube, to be fair. I mean, we've been race reviews and qualifying reviews. We've normally been hitting nearly 100 or sometimes more. I think Bahrain review that got nearly 700 views off the top of my head, something like that.
Shit.
Which is a lot, yeah. Considering we used to get like 50 on a good day.
Guys are growing.
We are, yeah. We are. It's good to see. Oh, remember, Ruby, there's the review from another Canadian. Need to read that out.
Yeah, I've got it in my notes.
Legend. The professional Price is here.
Ruby the Price, the professional.
Shit.
Are we waiting until Bang on 3 to get going?
I'll just share it on Twitter and Facebook, then we can get going.
Oh, let me just mute my TV.
Who's your pick for the Indy 500, Phil? Who's the favourite in your book? I know it's always a really hard one to call, but
Scott Dixon. What?
Yeah.
What?
What a surprise! Yeah.
Well, it starts there, but the reality is there's so many good cars this year, and it looks like you're able to pass a little bit more. So, but Scott Dixon's car is on another, but then it's Scott Dixon. It's like Lewis Hamilton, you know.
He is the man at the moment, isn't he? To be fair.
Well, it's 20. It's been going on nearly 20 years, though. That's the thing.
Brace yourselves while I sound like the entirety of the internet who don't like Lewis. It's the carry. Right, now that I've got
I'll just rewind. I'll just say, go look at 2009 when he had a piece of shit car and he was starting 19th at races and he came back and he won 3 Grand Prix. Yeah, you can tell me it's not.
Yep, or 2013 when.
Or 2013 when Nico Rosberg, with his lack of talent, had more points than him, but Lewis won a race in that car.
Hungary, unbelievable drive.
He did what Michael couldn't do, which was winning that Mercedes.
I think he had a slightly better Mercedes, but I take your point.
I don't know. That Michael Mercedes was pretty good back in like
2012, it was decent. 2010, it was pretty good as well. 11 was good.
I did enjoy watching through those Instagram TV things that Mercedes did pre-season.
It always came good sort of late season as well, didn't it? They did a bit of a Red Bull. And just sort of like threw something back at the end.
Oh, yeah. They had the upgrades. They didn't know what they were doing at first, and then they just did the upgrades later in the season, and they were able to make it good, but then nobody cared because it was really about whatever Ferrari and Red Bull. And whoever else at that point, I guess McLaren.
Lotus as well, remember them?
Well, I was thinking about it, how we were talking about Ferrari and McLaren. We're going to be talking about them. It's like, it's just like, the late 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And now, again, we're talking about McLaren and Ferrari, but it's not at the absolute front end of the field, but we're getting there.
It's a great battle, though. I really want to see more of it. To be honest, it's great. I love watching it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've shared it well on Ruby, so start
Yeah,
whenever you're ready.
I've seen. Do you want to click record?
I do.
Hello, YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it started doing that, and it's a
Yeah,
little
it
bit
started
weird.
doing. Yeah, it does that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that before.
No.
No, that's a new thing. Yeah.
Okay, let's get going. For the first time since 2013, Red Bull are finally back on top of the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships in the 2021 F1 season after a disastrous weekend last time out for reigning champions Mercedes. As the sport makes its way to the streets of Baku, we welcome you back to the Formula One Grid Talk podcast to preview all the big talking points ahead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. My name is Ruby Price, and joining me today we have SportlightPro's George Howson.
Hiya there.
Hey, Formula One Shakedown Steve Jackson.
Morning.
Morning. And Philip Mathew from the Grip Strip podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Firstly, it's time to give a shout out to Connor Walker 10, who left us a 5-star review. And of course, if you enjoy the podcast, we would love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So, George, Max Verstappen has been having some mega starts this season, but we saw last time out in Baku that just because you have a great start doesn't mean you're going to be ahead at the end of the first sector.
No, it doesn't, Ruby. You're right there. It's he's definitely coming into this one as the favorite. He's got the Drivers' Championship leads. I'd expect the Red Bull to do pretty well around Baku, to be honest, especially the time twisty sections. And obviously, he's got the Honda power unit in the back of that car, so he's going to be really riding the wave of confidence he's got from Monaco. But Sir Lewis Hamilton's going to be very stiff competition for him, as will Bottas and Sergio Perez as well. They're pretty quick from Baku too. But yeah, Verstappen definitely going to this one as the favourite, I'd say.
Yeah, and Steve, we've had a lot of talk going on about bendy rear wings over the recent times and how much of a straight line speed advantage that's been giving the Red Bull. Obviously, Baku with its massive straight down the start-finish straight, like straight line speed is something that you're absolutely going to need. And, you know, George touched on this. Perez has been a bit of a Baku specialist. Do you think that might give him at least some chance of getting his foot on that top step this weekend?
I think he kind of has to at this point. It's not, 2021's not really been the lightning quick start. I think quite a few people are expecting of Checo, myself included. It's ranged from okay to painful to watch, and it's not entirely his fault. And he is, expected to get to grips with what is considered to be one of the trickier cars on the grid to drive. But yeah, I think this is probably, if I'm honest, if this bendy wings thing comes to a head the way I'm thinking it will, I think this is going to be Red Bull's last real shot at, taking a bite out of the overall championship prospects. Baku is basically Monaco 2.0, and it's just Monaco with a longer straight. So they've got every possibility of success this weekend. So I'm not expecting much more than, I'm not expecting much other than total and utter dominance, because this is their last chance, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. There is quite a lot of similarities between Monaco and Baku, but then at the same time, there are some absolutely stark differences. And Phil, let's move on to Mercedes. After such a disastrous weekend, you would expect them to bite back. It's one of the characteristics that we always see in Lewis Hamilton. It's why he's got his still I rise, for saying on the back of his thing.
Yeah, whenever he has a really bad weekend, he usually responds with a great weekend the next time, Ruby. And I figure that's what's going to happen this coming weekend, because, you can't give up. It's the first time in 3 years or something he hasn't whatever it is, he hasn't had the points lead, basically. So, and Max is a tough out this whole year. He has been, in theory. Max could have had the points lead for a while now, considering that Red Bull gave away a couple of these races earlier in the year. But now Mercedes has to work. Lewis has to work. And when he gets focused and when he's really on, there isn't anyone better at the moment. And there's really very few in the history of Formula One that have been at that level either. So we will see what Mercedes has to bring to Azerbaijan. It's a track that Bottas is generally good at, and they've both had their moments there. Bottas has had, of course, bad luck, but then Bottas has bad luck everywhere. But I figure they're going to have to show up and really do something here, put this race, and then when they go to Ricard and start putting things together to get the momentum back in their favor.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Bottas that won the last Azerbaijan Grand Prix back in 2019, which I had to watch the highlights before this podcast started so that I could remember anything else that happened other than Ricciardo doing a bit of some dodgy reversing. But George, Valtteri Bottas, obviously the wheels kind of fell off or in some cases stayed on in last weekend's race, but he's over 50 points behind Lewis Hamilton at this point. He needs a weekend.
He needs a good weekend, doesn't he? He really does. I feel for him after Monaco. I mean, we've rightly criticised the guy for being miles off Hamilton, but the one race, the one weekend when he's ahead of Hamilton, he has the worst pit stop, the pit stop that lasted for 2 days or something like that. I think it was 43 hours it took him to get him off. So, yeah, it was a disaster for him, and I feel for him. But at the end of the day, he's behind Lando Norris, and we all know how good Lando Norris is. I cannot wax lyrical about him enough, but he's still in a much inferior car. If Bottas is going to come back, it's going to be at a track like Baku, or it's going to be at Austria, or maybe Russia. I think he'll be very happy that there's 2 Austrian Grand Prix this year. Bottas has had some bad luck, like you say, though. I think Phil mentioned 2018, he was a shoo-in to win that one, but he ran over the debris. 2019, he won it fair and square. 2017, he came back from a lap down, I think, to finish 3rd in the end. So he is very good at Baku, but he's just got to convert it to a clean, nice weekend. But if he is out front, if he is in 1st place and Hamilton is 2nd, will Mercedes let him keep that? I don't think they will, to be honest.
Yeah, it is obviously, as I say, Lewis that's in the championship fight. And I believe it was 2nd in 2017 because he got Lance Stroll directly on the line.
You're right.
If
You're
not
right.
just before.
You remember better than me there.
Yeah. But yeah, Steve, let's move on to McLaren. George has already mentioned Lando Norris is doing really well for himself in P3 at the minute in the championship, which as much as I love McLaren, I still don't believe sometimes when I see it. But, you know, they've got straight line speed. And as I've mentioned, you need straight line speed this weekend. And I think that could help them out in this very close battle that they've got going on with 4th place Ferrari.
Yeah, I keep thinking back to like 2016, 2017, and just at the time thinking they'll never get back to the lofty heights that they were getting to. They're so close. I think another season or two, maybe less than that, if they continue on the path they're going. It's like McLaren have a very solid future. They could even start making things awkward for their power unit supplier, which would be hilarious. But yeah, Lando's just steadily improved since he arrived in the sport. It's not often that you see that from a driver. Like, they'll either be rapid straight away but prone to mistakes. So like, you look at, Max is a perfect example. He was wickedly fast, but binned it as often as he put it on pole or a podium or something like that. Lando's just quietly chipped away, and I don't think he's ever put himself. Well, he has, but it's very rare that he puts himself in a position where he's overdriving the car to the point of just being stupid with it. You get the impression that he's in that seat for the long haul, and McLaren have obviously re-signed him for 2 years, 3 years, 2 years.
I know they've re-signed him.
2024 is the rumor, yeah.
Yeah. So he's obviously committed to a long-term future with McLaren, and I think that's a two-way street. He has obviously seen enough since he started with the team to put his faith in them, but it's really nice that faith has been reciprocated, and I think this is just going to be another shot in the arm. Not that he needs it, because he's been absolutely hauling ass this season. I expect him to be there or thereabouts, same as Monaco.
Yeah, and speaking of people being same as thereabouts in Monaco, Phil, Daniel Ricciardo is a previous Baku winner, and he's also a previous Monaco winner. He had a terrible Monaco weekend, despite that, fantastic McLaren livery, which, as I figured, would look a lot better IRL than in some renders. But, he's half the points of Norris. He's still somewhat getting used to the car. As with Bottas and as with Perez, Ricciardo needs a good weekend this weekend.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure, Ruby. I mean, you figure Danny Rick will get there, and they're building a new chassis for him to help with, kind of getting around it with the car, getting a better feel or what he needs. And fundamentally, amongst those three drivers, I feel like it would be Daniel Ricciardo that comes to grips quickest. He is great on the street courses. I think I figured that when we did the Monaco preview or whatever, that he was going to do all right there because he's a great driver there. Didn't happen. It has to start at some point, especially with how close the battle is for third in the Constructors' Championship between them and the red cars, and it'll be something to see if he can go and compete, because Lando's having a great year, and he just keeps on building on his confidence and his talents and everything, and the car's better. So now if Daniel Ricciardo can go up there and do a support, not just a support, but run up where he can, as a top five driver in the sport, basically, like he has been for many years, then that's what McLaren signed him for. And that's why he's going to be around, we would think, for a little while there. But he needs to put a good result together, and I think this would be the start of it this weekend at Azerbaijan.
Yeah, there's every chance that he could get that good result this weekend. And George, let's move on to Ferrari. A somewhat polarizing result last weekend out in Monaco. Charles obviously not even starting, but then Sainz finishing second. That's just Ferrari in a nutshell, really, particularly over the last couple of years. But, they've done well here in the past. And, as long as Charles doesn't repeat his 2019 qualifying, they could be there fighting with McLaren over P3 and 4.
Yeah, they really are fighting with McLaren. I thought McLaren would have kind of pulled out a bit of a gap, but I think they've only got a couple points between them now after Monaco. And I said it on the qualifying show after the Monaco Grand Prix qualifying, I think Ferrari had the fastest car, probably, at least in qualifying at Monaco. So that car is extremely good in low speed corners. And there's a lot of them in Azerbaijan, a lot of 90-degree right-handers. I don't expect Ferrari to be up there with Mercedes and Red Bull, although it wouldn't totally surprise me after last week. But I honestly think they'll come into this round as the third best. I think McLaren will have a big job on to beat them this weekend. Charles Leclerc, he's really got something to prove after getting pole at Monaco, but not able to start the race. He is going to be fired up. And Carlos Sainz, we've talked about the people who have moved teams and they've struggled. Vettel's struggled. Perez has struggled. Ricciardo's struggled. Alonso struggled on his comeback. The one guy that's moved teams and has fitted into that car perfectly is Carlos Sainz at Ferrari. And I'm so happy that he got that podium. The second place was even challenging Verstappen towards the end. So both of those guys, if the Red Bulls and the Mercedes mess up, they're in with a shot of a podium this weekend.
Yeah, other than the teams that have got 0 points for both of their drivers and Alfa and Aston's, Charles Leclerc and Sainz are two of the closest teammates in the championship. So, Steve, George has obviously just talked on this. Carlos Sainz is very much adapted to the car so quickly. What would you expect to see from him this weekend? Because obviously we're kind of thinking of Leclerc as the lead Ferrari, but Sainz has absolutely got momentum on his side this weekend.
I think it depends on how bendy his rear wing is. I'm joking. No, I think it'll be refreshing for Ferrari, especially for people like Matteo Binotto, to have two drivers they can comfortably rely on. And I have nothing but positive thoughts for Seb, but you could just tell that relationship just there was no way it was ending other than the way it ended. So I think now that they've got two drivers that they can confidently rely on in terms of strategy and actually helping each other out in the race, I wouldn't necessarily say that Carlos is at Leclerc's level in terms of outright, like, persistent race pace, but he showed at Monaco that he's perfectly capable of just being annoying and putting himself in a position where he can capitalize and go for the undercut or the overcut depending on what's happening with them around them. One thing that has surprised me with Ferrari this year is it seems to be relatively gentle on its tires without being a bit conservative. I mean, that's a problem that Mercedes are having this year, and Ferrari obviously can they've not had a reliance on now banned technology that may be affecting them. So they've got a bit more flexibility in terms of strategies they can call. And dodgy Ferrari strategies aside, please don't do that this weekend, Ferrari, or next weekend. I think Carlos could quite possibly end up definitely in that top 5. I wouldn't be surprised at another podium, especially if things go a wee bit wrong for Mercedes again, which they could do. So who knows?
Yeah, so jumping down severely on some points, but Phil, Aston Martin leapfrogged Alpine and AlphaTauri this weekend. Finally Vettel kind of showed up, but it did kind of require Monaco for that to happen. We've mentioned it's a similar-ish circuit, but with a lot more focus on straight line speed every now and then. Where do you expect to see Aston Martin this weekend, other than Stroll showing up just as the action's getting interesting on some replays?
Yeah, Stroll. I was like, I'm known for going and saying, awful things about Lance Stroll, mainly because he deserves it. But then also, it is one of his best racetracks. He has finished third at this racetrack, as Steve mentioned earlier. Could have been a second, or if somebody. Yeah, and then it's like, this is a good racetrack for him. He does well on these street circuits. So, that aside, and of course, Seb waking up from being rousted from slumber that he's been in for like 3.5 years. That car is not a great car still. It's going to be harder for them at that circuit because it's going to ask a lot more of the car. There's way more. Monaco is what it is, but with Baku, you have the long straights, as you said, Ruby. You have medium and high speed. You have every type of corner. The Aston has been a car that's been right outside the top 10 or right on the fringe of the top 10 so far this year. And I would venture to say that that's where they will be. At least Seb will be in a better state of mind. So maybe that means they could push a little bit, a possible Q3 appearance, possible edge points. But then, their battle is within their little pod with, I think, Alpine and AlphaTauri now. So they're all going to be in that same spot, and it's all going to be race to race who's going to be in the best position.
Yeah, how the mighty, in inverted commas, have fallen for the Racing Point Force India team to be now fighting over AlphaTauri and Alpine down in 6th, I think it is, maybe 5th. But George, obviously this team has historically done well at this venue, but the team that we're looking at this season is just so far away from that.
Yeah, it's miles off, isn't it? I mean, they got a podium with Perez in 2018, I want to say. The car is not good. I mean, we've covered it quite a bit on this show. They stole the design of the Mercedes from 2019. They did it for their 2020 car. It was only meant to be a 1-year thing, but it's become a 2-year thing, and they're suffering because of it now. Vettel and Stroll, I think, did incredibly, and the strategy department did incredibly well to go from 8th and 13th on the grid to 5th and 8th by the final flag in Monaco. But I don't expect much from them here. They do have the Mercedes power unit in the back, which will help them along the long straights. It's not that easy to overtake round here. I think the likes of the McLarens and the AlphaTauris are just going to blast past them on that incredibly long front straight and the back straight for that matter. They're both very long. So I don't expect much from them, but I didn't expect anything from them in Monaco either. And they got very solid points. So who knows what's going to happen?
Who knows, indeed. I've stopped predicting Formula One at this point. Steve, AlphaTauri just 1 point behind Aston Martin. Pierre Gasly, could very much put in a solid performance this weekend. Because he's very much at home in that car, and he did finish ahead of a Mercedes last weekend.
Yeah, to Lewis's ire. It's tricky with AlphaTauri because we know what the car is capable of, and we know what both their drivers are capable of. I mean, Yuki's a different story entirely. we'll obviously get to him, but yeah, like the trouble is with AlphaTauri this year is Monaco is obviously one of their better performances, but it's hard to say whether that's a blip or whether it's a definitive turn of performance, whether they've found something in the car or if Gasly's just adjusted his driving style slightly to suit the slightly sort of more tail happy cars we have this year, just with the slight loss of downforce that they have. So it's hard to say. I mean, I suppose the advantage with Baku being so similar to Monaco, especially in the sort of, it's a lot of it's 90-degree corners, like low and medium speed 90-degree corners, which is, Monaco is they're not 90 degrees, but they are very, very narrow, very sort of tight apex corners. So, I mean, if Pierre can at least put the car in that sort of, in a comfortable top 10 position, because honestly, Baku is very similar to Monaco as well. Qualifying is quite important. Then there's opportunity there to capitalize. I'm still not 100% sold on their car. We know it's quick, but something just seems to be holding them back a wee bit in terms of finding that outright pace that we saw from them late last year.
Yeah. So, Phil, let's talk rookie Tsunoda. He's currently sat on 2 points. This weekend is going to require a lot of consistency from him. And obviously with him being a rookie, that's not necessarily something that he's had. But, we saw in 2019 Charles under a lot of pressure driving to the castle section. Yuki is obviously under a little bit of pressure, just in the sense of, it's getting to that point now in the season where you lose the excuse of, oh, they're a rookie. What do you expect to see from Yuki this weekend?
Lots of action, just like Takuma Sato used to do, because he's basically he reminds me, he's just a tinier version of Takuma Sato. I mean, that's literally what it is. He is flashy. He brings entertainment. He's going to drive full throttle. He's probably going to wreck a lot, but at least there's going to be entertainment there. And he speaks very well, and he has a great passion. And for Red Bull, who has terrible PR in general, especially with their main team, they have a kid that is somebody that they can build around in multiple ways. What do I think? It's going to be difficult. Once they get back to the more tame circuits, which have like 800 miles of runoff area, I think he'll be fine. But, this is a track and a car. I mean, he could come off and get points again, but I also think he could put it in the fence and he'll be out early and he'll bring out a safety car. It's just kind of what it is. I mean, that was what he was doing in Formula 2. He'd put together these great performances, but then he'd go and respond after that with a mistake or a mind-numbing thing, which makes me think like he's just like Sato, and that's what Sato was for all that time when he was in Formula 1, and that was most of his career. And all of a sudden something switched a few years ago, and he's able to not crash cars anymore, and he wins big races. So hopefully it doesn't take Yuki Tsunoda nearly 20 years to figure that out, but I figure it'll come in due time. But he is a rookie, and it's an AlphaTauri. Really, the expectation shouldn't be as high. It's just because he's such a dynamic personality, and people just like watching him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with his age, he has at least got that in his corner, so he could take 20 years to get up to speed and still be in the sport based off some of them. But, you know, he's no Fernando Alonso, who's coming in as one of the youngest F1 drivers we've ever seen this season. But, George, let's move on to the Alpines. 17 points, one behind AlphaTauri, two behind Aston Martin. Ocon obviously tends to do pretty well around here. Fernando Alonso was driving the arse off the McLaren the last time he was here. But at the minute, driving the arse off the Alpine gets you maybe P11, P12. They need to be driving a little bit further than that this weekend.
Yeah, they need to really wring everything they can out of that car. I think they'll struggle. I'll be honest with you. I think they'll struggle here because it's a power circuit at the end of the day. You don't run too low downforce, but it is a power track. And the Renault is probably the worst power unit on the grid. Maybe the Ferrari, but I'd say the Renault probably is. So I think they're going to struggle this weekend. But like you said, Ocon did do pretty well here. I remember that he crashed into Perez in 2017 and Perez could have won that race. I think about 10 different drivers could have won the race, to be fair. It was that chaotic. But you're right in saying that the battle between Aston Martin, AlphaTauri, and Alpine is tight. Just 2 points between those three teams. It's like the bottom three as well. Anything can swing it. 1 point is vital. So anything they can pick up here will be impressive. I remember Alonso did really well in 2018, I think, or 2019. No, 2018 it must have been, to recover. He had two wheels off, but he somehow brought it back to the pits and got a points finish. So he's not bad around here either. So you never know. They could surprise a few. But I'm not, like Aston Martin, I'm not expecting a lot from them this weekend.
Yeah, and Steve, we obviously came into the season expecting Alpine to maybe continue on from like the momentum that Renault finished the season with. Obviously, they didn't manage to get P3, but the fact that they were still fighting over that in the final race of the season, we wanted them to continue on because, it's nice to still have the Renault brand in the sport. But, with all of this poor performance and, fighting over the positions that they're currently fighting over, it makes you wonder how long, given that there is rumors of a potential break, like how much longer they are just going to accept this.
Yeah, I think we spoke about this on an earlier podcast, just with the I think it was the livery podcast. Actually, we went off on a bit of a tangent, just talking about the restructure that Alpine went through after Cyril suddenly up and left. I'd still really be keen to find out what happened there. But they've brought in a wealth of knowledge, but there's no single person leading this. From what I understand, Marcin Budkowski is sharing that role with Davide Brivio from MotoGP. So it's an interesting concept. I was questioning whether this would work, and I think so far I've got my answer. I don't think it does necessarily. Generally, in a sport which is any sport, including anything at this level, which is this cutthroat, having a single a figurehead to drive the team is typically what's worked in the past. But I'm still not sure on that management structure they've got. I'm still not sure on their aero design either. I mean, they've obviously gone in a very different way with where they've actually placed their cooling and that sort of thing on the car. It's very apparent where they've stored it, right behind the driver's head. And the car still looks quite ungainly. And they're obviously bringing in updates and that sort of thing. But this is a holding pattern year for a lot of those midfield teams who I think everyone's just treading water until next year. The question is, how long can they carry this on until Renault or Alpine or, just there's a bit of I suppose, an internal implosion and it all ends in tears, which I don't want it to happen. I mean, we're technically losing an engine supplier with Honda going at the end of the year. And the thought of another supplier disappearing is quite scary for the sport, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing we do not want to see, other than maybe a certain driver leaving the field, is teams and brands that have, historically associated with Formula One leaving the sport. So
who do you mean leaving? There's only 19 drivers on the grid. I mean, we're fine with everyone we've got, right? So it's fine.
if only. Phil, let's move on to Alfa Romeo, who finally got a point this season last weekend out. George mentioned obviously how important it is to get, maybe 1 point, and how important that can be. Giovinazzi obviously getting that point ahead of Kimi Räikkönen. We know they're not really going to be anywhere this weekend, but what they will take in their advantages, they are now definitively ahead of the Williams and the Haas, rather than just being level but ahead on countback.
Yeah, having that 1 point is going to make a big difference here later in the season. I mean, Alpha Sauber is the only one that really is doing any development amongst those three teams too. So in that sense, they should be able to sneak a point here and there. Giovinazzi has shown this year that it was the right decision to sign him back. It looks like he seems to have taken a step forward in his standard. And Kimi's Kimi. He's out there. He's drinking his vodka. He's doing whatever he's doing. I mean, at some point, I think you would think you'd get bored running 14th, but when you get paid millions of dollars to run 14th, I guess I'll do that too. But that's the thing. I think there's a lot more internal stuff because the Alfa Romeo deal, I think, is going away. The branding, if they're going to make some different connections with one particular manufacturer, and how that might change the driver lineup. But it looks like Giovinazzi has taken that step forward, which they've needed. The car seems okay. It's not amazing. It hasn't been amazing for a long time. I think the last time it was really worthwhile was when Checo was there, one of his 2 stints that he was there. So, see what happens this weekend. As long as getting into Q2 definitely is a goal, and then maybe something crazy happens, you could sneak a Q3 like last race. But really, Q2, getting out of Q1 is their goal. Get well ahead of the Williams and Putin Haas, and then put themselves in position during the race.
Yeah, absolutely. George, staying on Alfa Romeo, obviously, Kimi Räikkönen, Philip mentioned, getting paid millions to just drive around in 14th. Giovinazzi, some would argue is there because he's Italian, but, if it's that 1 point that he scored in Monaco that keeps Alfa Romeo ahead at the end of the season, and he has shown that he is maturing and, is at least driving a lot more consistently. Do you think there is obviously we are still so far away from the end of the season, and, silly season hasn't even begun yet, but, you've got to put forward a case that maybe Giovinazzi could still, deserve to be in that car in 2022 if he's the person that single-handedly keeps them above.
Yeah, definitely. I'm surprised by Giovinazzi. I thought after they renewed his contracts after last year, I thought, oh my God, why? Why? It's such a boring, safe choice. But he's outperformed Raikkonen this year. He's beat him on a number of occasions, not just at Monaco. And yeah, that's a massive point that he got for them at Monaco. It was one thing to qualify in the top 10, to finish in the top 10 as well. Brilliant job. I mean, yeah, Raikkonen was right behind in 11th. If you were going to keep one on pure performance, you would definitely keep Giovinazzi. It'd be a lot cheaper as well. I mean, Phil was mentioning the millions of dollars. It will be a lot more millions of dollars to hire Raikkonen for another year. I'd like to see Ilott. I'd like to see Schumacher there. I don't think they'll put Schumacher there. I think they'll keep him at Putin Haas as Phil's branded them. I'd like to see Ilott there, or Schwartzman, or even Theo Pourchaire. I think he's at Sauber's youth academy, so he's in with a shot as well. If he turns 18 in time for next season, because he's 17 at the moment. I don't know if he'll turn 18 for next year. So yeah, Giovinazzi, he could well surprise a few and get a point again this week, and I think it's a big ask. It really is. But, he's slowly got there, Gio. I think he's about 26, 27, something like that. He's maturing. He's improved year on year. So fair play to him. He's got his head down and he's worked hard at it.
Yeah, especially when you consider that he wrecked the Sauber the 2 times that he subbed for them before he was actually put in that car itself. So, yeah, maturing from Antonio Giovinazzi. Steve, let's talk about the Williams for this weekend. And it could be a happy Saturday and a disastrous Sunday based on everything that we've seen this season.
Standard operating service for Williams then, isn't it? Yeah, but unfortunate. They're obviously making steps in the right direction. I feel like I say this every time we talk about Williams. Steps in the right direction, but it's still not enough. They are still definitely occupying that Group C category at the back of the grid. Alfa Romeo, as we just discussed, are now in this weird no man's land. But yeah, I'm still not 100% sure on where they'll end up at the end of the season. I had lofty expectations that they might be able to sort of latch on to the back of the midfield and start playing with Alpine and that sort of thing. I don't, based on current performance so far, I think I might need to lower my expectations. I am an unashamed Williams fan, so I do tend to, put hideously lofty expectations on them and get disappointed when it doesn't happen. You can imagine how I felt in 2019. But with the driver lineup they've got, Nick's doing pretty good. He's growing as a driver. He's another Giovinazzi for me, actually. He's quite frustrating a lot of the time, but then he has these little glimpses of absolutely brilliant driving where you sit there and think, yep, he belongs in that car, or he belongs in Formula One in a car. He's developing as a driver. George, I mean, what can you say? There are rumors floating around on Twitter and other social media that he is apparently all but signed a 2-year deal with Mercedes to replace Porridge as of next year. So we'll see if that comes to light. I mean, I think Williams would be daft to let him go without even bothering to try and retain him, especially with the new technical regulations coming in next year. That's probably the best opportunity Williams are going to have until the new engine regs turn up in 2025 to actually make big steps forward. So interesting swing year for them. But again, I think like a lot of those sort of back of the field teams, it's just a holding pattern and they'll just take what they can get.
Yeah, I did see an article suggesting that Doralton might be able to convince George Russell to stay for a further 2 years at Williams. And it would take quite the amount of money or the lack of a seat, I think, to keep George in that car after, he must be one of the most patient people in Formula One. Phil,
and it's frustrating for him as well because, I mean, like he's really good mates with Lando, and Lando's obviously in a car that is viciously fast and is quite capable of landing podiums, and there must be some ribbing behind the pits and that sort of thing between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, we all saw like how much that foursome of rookies last season were just getting on with each other and streaming and everything along those lines. But yeah, Phil, on a similar point, George Russell, he might end up getting into Q2 on Saturday. But, as has happened all this season, just the Williams doesn't follow cars well. And then all of a sudden they're fighting nobody but themselves.
Yeah. It's a shame, honestly. I mean, especially for George. I think this show is basically a George Russell underground George Russell fan club. But it's not big for any other. I mean, the fact is he's really, really good, and he's a good kid, and he actually has the potential to really be something. And of course, Lando and all these other guys. When he gets into a sim, he's a freak. Like there's all these different things, and unfortunately on the racetrack, I don't know. Doritos, they're just out there running whatever they're doing, and they're holding on, as Steve said, with next year. And he always does his move on Saturday, and that's what they're good for. One lap pace, and then once you get into traffic, it's a disaster, and it's a shame, really. You need mixed conditions, possibly, to maybe change it up a little at some of these racetracks. That might give George a chance, but we'll see what happens. Hopefully, he does get signed to be Sir Hamilton's teammate at the round table next year.
It would be quite the team driver lineup, absolutely. George, let's move on to Putin Haas, as Philip so, kindly dubbed them. Mick Schumacher, last weekend out, made one of the only on-track overtakes of the weekend, and then was proceeded to be overfaked by his teammate, because a team order is not an actual overtake. It's going to be the battle for the back row, obviously, this weekend, and there are a lot of conspiracy theorists that Haas organized that overfake so that for once a certain driver wouldn't be finishing last at the weekend.
You know what? I can believe that. Haas is such a weird team this year. That wouldn't surprise me, because does anybody know how he actually fell behind? Like, did he do another pit stop, or it's just like he was suddenly 30 seconds behind? Schumacher was behind the other one. It was bizarre. Yeah. I mean, that overtake into the hairpin, you could tell if it was anybody else, he would have turned in on him. No doubt about it. And yeah, like you said, it's the battle of the back row, battle to avoid being last, battle to not be 3 laps down by the finish. It's a dreadful car, that Haas. I can't see it doing anything. It doesn't have a particularly powerful engine. The drivers are really struggling with it for the most part. I mean, Schumacher, he's doing his best. I really like him, but you can't polish a turd. He can't really help it that much. He could drive the race of his life and he might maybe beat Latifi again or something like that. That's the only thing you can see happening. And then for the other one, it's just, he's just going around collecting laps, getting experience. It's probably not going to get any better though, but that's just him. So yeah, I really don't know what to say. I mean, you gave me the short straw with that one, didn't you? George, you're going to be a panelist in this one for the first time, but I'm going to give you Haas.
Well, normally I end up giving Phil the other Haas driver, but we've got to do it. It's an initiation at this point, but
it's just the way it fell. You got to do the rotation.
Exactly. And on what you were saying about, no one really knows how Schumacher fell behind, any suggestions that there was a problem. He was driving behind Mazepin at about 1 second a lap for the end of the race. It, by all accounts, that's not a problem with the car. That's a problem with, someone who's told you to drop back. There's no other way around it. And Steve, let's talk about the, no one wants to talk about driver. I don't even know where to start. There's really nothing to talk about.
What's really sad is we got to Alpine, and then I was going, right, I know the order we're doing this in now, and I was sitting there thinking, shit, I'm gonna end up with Mazepin, aren't I? Just going off the structure of it. So, all right, fair enough. I'm just trying to find something to example this with. Okay, this is a remote for my television that my dog has chewed. If I put this in the cockpit of Mazepin's car, this will do a better job. What else? My laptop charger, that's broken. So I have to hold it in a certain position so it charges. That does a better job. I'm not too sure how to... I say I'm not too sure how to a lot on this, but I'm really not too sure how to even begin with Mazepin. So with the Facebook page that I moderate, there was a discussion thread that popped up. Describe Mazepin in a word. I put down dangerous. There were other words, but there's certain words that we don't allow just to try and keep it, a civil community and that sort of thing. So fair enough. But he is dangerous. He's got a complete and utter disregard for blue flags, for other drivers in general. He did a really good number on Callum Eilert's face a couple of years ago in F2, I think it was, and left him with a black eye and quite significant bruising. We obviously know what he's like with members of the opposite sex, and if they stay as far away from him as possible, it won't be far enough. But really, I think his presence in Formula One, and also the fact that Formula One races in some questionable places like Azerbaijan, completely goes against their "we race as one" thing that they're trying to push. It's a complete. They're basically pissing all over themselves with it, and I would be concerned if Mazepin had a continued presence in Formula One after this year. And there's people who are going to be listening to this thinking that I'm being dramatic, I'm just being rude because it's the in thing to do is to bag on Mazepin, but I can't make this clear enough. I'm normally quite fair on drivers. There's drivers that I don't like, but I still respect their ability and their talents. I'm not a fan of Lewis Hamilton, but I won't knock the fact that he is the world multiple drivers championship winning driver that he is, for a very good reason. I've got no merits to put on Mazepin at all. He just doesn't belong there. The fact that there were question marks over him being eligible for the super license, that is where this should have ended. They could have put him on the sidelines for a year as a reserve driver, or put him into, I don't know, the Clio Cup or something like that, or put him in like a Golf diesel for the Nürburgring 24 and just get him to circulate forever. I don't care, but he just doesn't belong in that car. He doesn't belong in Formula One. I could go on, but I'm not going to, because it's nearly 3 a.m. Where I am. I've got nothing else to say. I just can't. I can't do it.
There's nothing like a nearly 3 a.m. rant to wake you up on a Saturday morning. No, Sunday morning over there, isn't it?
Sunday morning for me. Sunday morning. Yeah.
Sunday morning. So that's the grid +1, and let's make some top 3 predictions. So Philip, what are you expecting this weekend? Who's going to be on the top step? Who's going to be disappointed with second, and who's going to be happy with third?
I'm going to go Verham and Leclerc. I'm going to go Verham-Lec as my podium for Baku this week. I figure with Verstappen's momentum is going to continue. I figure Hamilton will bounce back, but it won't be to the level that he needs to go and beat Verstappen, because Verstappen will have the pole, get the start. Red Bull will actually manage a race properly for once. And then Leclerc will respond after the crash and not even be able to take place in his own Grand Prix and get that third place, and continue, Ferrari's sort of resurgence in this 2021 season.
Yep. Go on, George. What's your predictions for this weekend?
Well, I think that, like I said, Verstappen's a favourite to win. I think that in Bahrain and Imola, they had the fastest car there, power tracks. This is a power track. I'm going to go with a Red Bull 1-2. I'm going to say Verstappen to head Perez, and third place. And this is not a bold prediction, but I think this will happen. I think Bottas will be in third for a lot of it, and then he'll defer to Hamilton to give him a podium, to be honest. So I'm going to go with Verperham as my top 3.
Verperham. I mean, it can't be your bold prediction, because we know what your bold prediction is going to be.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's not that. I don't know what you're talking about. I never go with the same one.
No, never. Go on, Steve. What's your top 3?
Well, it goes with my bold prediction, but there will not be a Mercedes presence on the podium at Baku. Well, that's my prediction anyway. It gets weirder because I actually think Leclerc is going to win. There's very good reason for that. He's Charles Leclerc. I think he's got a bit of a score to settle with Baku. He's been wickedly fast around here, and then something just goes wrong. I am stupid immediately comes to mind, and that got sort of roasted in the F1 highlight reels at the end of the season, that crash of his in qualifying. But I think Leclerc first, and then Red Bull immediately behind Verstappen and Perez in that order. I think, Perez did a pretty good job at Monaco. So if he keeps up that sort of, if he takes confidence from that and builds on that and recognises that a lot of Baku and a lot of Monaco share similar traits, then he's obviously figured out something with that car to do what he did. I think, what was it, 9th to 4th or something along those lines. So he did a really good job. So I think as long as Perez, and he's the big question mark with this podium, I think as long as he keeps his chin up and remains consistent and doesn't get too far into his own head, then he'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm going to buck the trend and I'm going to predict Hamilton on the top, purely just because this is Lewis, hunting ground. He had a bad weekend last weekend and he always goes into the next one, thinking, cool, I'm going to win this. And then he will. So I think, given historically that is what has always happened, I think that's what has a very good chance of happening this weekend. And then I'm going to be boring and predict Verstappen being second, because Hamver, it's got to happen. But then I'm going to say Lando P3.
Good shout. Yeah.
One of us has to be right.
Yeah,
we can't
one
all
of us
be wrong.
has to be right. So let's move.
What if it's George Russell on the top step?
The craziest race of all time.
I mean, that is what we were expecting back in 2016 after the F2 or GP2. I don't know. But then we just had one of the most sedate, races ever.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that. It's a European Grand Prix. It was a different race. Totally different race.
Yeah. Yeah, let's look at bold predictions. We might already know George's, but Philip, let's get your bold prediction, please.
Yeah, well, I'm only doing this because of what happened at Monaco. I'm going to go and say there will not be a proper safety car at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which is probably got that 90% similar percentage that there's always at least a full safety car or something like that. So that'll be my bold prediction. I'll be wrong, but whatever. I'll say there won't be a proper safety car in Sunday's Grand Prix.
Well, my bold prediction was that there was going to be 3 last weekend, so and we got none. So you never know. You never know. George, what's your bold prediction?
Well, we've heard it a few times before. He's a young driver. He's made mistakes, but I think he's going to put some of them right this weekend. He's got a lot of potential. He's a popular character. He's a good guy. People like him, despite some of his language and his antics. I'm going to say Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly to be in the points together. It's an AlphaTauri double in the points. I don't think George Russell has a hope in hell, to be fair. That's not stopped me going from before. But I'll say a double points finish for the AlphaTauris. I think they'll do well, like Red Bull this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, my bold prediction might have been that George was going to say someone other than George Russell, but that would have been right. So, Steve, your bold prediction, please.
You had us in the first half there, George, not going to lie. God. I don't know if I want to say my bold prediction, because, again, it sounds like I'm just bagging on Mercedes when I'm genuinely not. There's some thinking behind this. A double DNF for Mercedes.
Whoa.
That would be so un-Mercedes, given, what I was saying about podium predictions.
Indeed, but I'm going to take you back a couple of years to Germany. Was it 2019 when they ran their special livery and it all went horribly wrong? That's Mercedes home race, special livery, 100th year or whatever it was. I can't remember what the celebration was exactly. But, I mean, that was a timely reminder that Mercedes are a team comprised entirely of humans and not these superhuman space alien things that can't put a foot wrong. I don't know. It'll either go really well for Mercedes or it's going to go horribly wrong. But I think Porridge might have another 43-hour long pit stop. And just given how unforgiving Baku is in terms of track limits, Hamilton could get it wrong. We've seen him get it wrong once already this year at Imola. So it could happen again. I'm not saying this to be horrid to them. I don't, it's not something you'd ideally want to happen, but at the same time, I can sort of see a situation of them cracking under pressure, especially now that Red Bull have the initiative. For how long that lasts, I don't know, but this is that, like, they'll know that Red Bull will be just going for the jugular because this might be their last chance before the bendy wings saga sort of comes to an end.
Interesting. I think my bold prediction is going to be that the fastest lap will be done by someone out of the top 10. Because we always see, someone from Red Bull or Mercedes taking that opportunity to do like a last 3-lap pit stop. But I think they might be a lot closer this weekend, so they won't have those opportunities. And, that will then free up the space for someone further back to have already, had that fast lap and, deny the point.
Who would it be outside of the top 10?
Maybe Fernando Alonso will just be like, oh, screw this, I've had enough, and, get a pit stop.
Somebody dusts off the MasterCard Lola from 98 and puts Ricardo Rosset in the seat and just goes, go for it, son. He's never been that fast before.
Well, he had tossed it right into the first turn tires then.
You leave Ricardo Rosset alone.
And so with all of that, it's self-promo time. Now a chance to give a little bit of a plug to people's own projects. So George, head of SportlightPro, go on. Let's give us a bit of a elevator pitch.
So I have my own website, sportlightpro.com. Ruby has written for it once. Phil's written for it a few times as well, doing previews. We cover F1 and football mainly, but other sports as well, where we chip in when people want to write about it. It's available on Twitter and Facebook as well. And obviously my other passion project is the Grid Talk podcast. I do host it every now and again. It's been a good experience being a panelist for a change. I stepped up when other people didn't want to come on today or weren't available. So yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Yeah, if people haven't heard of the Grid Talk podcast, I thoroughly recommend it. There's a nice, diverse group of people that show up, and we do talk about a lot of things. Some people say we chat shit. Some people are wrong. But, Steve, please give us some information about Formula Shakedown.
So it's a largely Australasian F1 community, basically, but it celebrates everything open wheel. So it's IndyCar, it's F5000, which is fantastic if you haven't seen what F5000 is. It's basically Formula One for bogans. But Formula Shakedown, it's a Facebook community. Come and join us. Just type in Formula Shakedown in the search bar. Normally I'd plug my social media channels, but instead I just want to give a quick shout out, if I can, to I know we're a 4-wheel channel. This is a 2-wheel shout out, but it's basically just best wishes and fingers crossed for Jason Depper Square. It wasn't long ago in Moto3, he had a rather significant accident. I'll be honest, it doesn't look amazing. There's no updates on him as of yet, but if anyone from the MotoGP world is also listening to this, which they might be, just best wishes to Jason and all the best. Hope he pulls through.
Yeah, and those are obviously reciprocated by the Formula One Grid Talk team and the F1 Chronicle itself, and presumably SportlightPro and the Grip Strip podcast, which Philip Mathew, please, take the opportunity to sell us the Grip Strip podcast.
Well, I don't know if I can really sell it with how many followers I have, but either way, the Grip Strip podcast, George has been on, staying at whatever the word would be, ridiculous times of the morning to come on the show. We've had Tom of the Monkey Seat podcast do the same thing. That's a show that we talk about all types of motorsports, not just Formula One, but we do IndyCar, NASCAR, We do the roundup, which covers sports cars and motorcycles and anything that really goes fast. We did a little bit of a preview on Extreme that'll be taking place this weekend in their second race of the year. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn. We're on Podbean as well. And you can find the show at philipgmatthew.com. And of course, I write for George on SportlightPro when I'm able to actually show up and my work isn't driving me through the wall. So thanks for having me on, and always for all the great times and talking about Formula One.
Yeah, and I myself am a podcaster. I host the music podcast Fresh from the Scene, speaking to people involved in the music scene around Huddersfield, Manchester, West Yorkshire, and more recently, a little bit more around the world as well, because, you know, now's a good time, I think, for the world to come together and, you know, just be exposed to a lot more. So, yeah, with that, that is the show. Grid Talk is available on Amazon, as well as YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, Omni Studio, and Pocket Casts. Just search F1 Grid Talk. We have a huge back catalogue of shows with previews and reactions to race results and qualifying. We are on Reddit. Search for the subreddit F1 Grid Talk, and we also have a Patreon for mics, lights, and better recording equipment. Also, make sure that you subscribe so that you're the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back at the weekend to review the results from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Thank you very much to my panelists for joining me.
Thank you, Brown, as well.
Bye.
Yeah, and thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
George, click stop.
Stop the cloud recording. Recording stopped. There, we heard
Recording
it.
has stopped.
It's official.
It's official. We have a comment saying, do we think the flexi wing on the Red Bull on the long straights in Baku would make them favourites for this weekend? And George, you've obviously touched on this. You think that Max Verstappen is the favourite for this show this weekend. What do you... Obviously, that's kind of the prediction then, that the flexi wing is going to make a difference.
See, this is the thing. I've heard more about these flexi wings, and it just sounds all a bit petty between Wolff and Horner. Really, I don't know how much of a huge difference it's going to make. Both of them have the contracting wings, especially Mercedes' front wing that does move around a lot. But obviously, it's allowed under the law. But aren't they making them illegal after Azerbaijan?
I think so. I know that they were giving a grace period for teams.
So at the moment, they're basically giving the teams time to sort of rein in the actual flex under load. So when they test them at Paul Ricard, they'll be legal. The legality box, and I've got let me just give me 2 seconds. I had this just in case we spoke about it on the podcast. We've actually got the technical regulations in front of me. The legality box for movement under load of the rear wing is 3 millimeters. They reckon the Red Bull rear wing is moving upwards of 9 millimeters under load.
That's a big difference.
So it's quite a bit. And if you consider that's not just rearward movement, but also down, basically like a downward angle movement, that's changing the entire deflection of that rear wing, the entire structure. So it's significant, but I mean, yeah, the Mercedes front wing moves a hell of a lot as well. That's obviously going to have an impact. I think it's just pissing in the wind from everyone. It annoys me because it's meant to be like the pinnacle of engineering this sport, and the rules are becoming increasingly prescriptive and limiting, and it's almost like it'd be like me being like saying you've got a square peg, you've got to fit it in a round hole, and you can do whatever you like to fit it, but you're not allowed to use any tools. You just have to use your hands. And it's just I think it is going to affect Red Bull significantly more than anyone else, purely because they're the only team who are able to actually take it to Mercedes consistently this season by all appearances. So yeah, I think after Azerbaijan, it might just go back to standard operating procedure, and Mercedes just walk to another whitewash again.
I mean, it is
no.
Formula One.
Yay.
If the teams are happy, then something's wrong. But it's like you were just saying. Mercedes obviously introduced the DAS last season, which was genuinely like innovative and great for warming up tires. Next season, they're banning tire blankets. DAS would be perfect next season.
That's dangerous. I don't like that.
Yeah. Have you watched a Super GT round, George? Because they don't have tire warmers, and those GT 500s when they go out in cold tires, it's the funniest thing you've ever fucking seen. You almost expect the normal commentators to leave and the Japanese D1 drift commentary to kick in, because they're just sideways the entire time, especially at places like Fuji. But
bring in Takeshi's Castle commentators.
Get Craig Charles on it.
Yes. I'm not looking forward to Paul Ricard onwards, because I just I've got this horrible feeling that this epic scrap we've had going so far is just going to fizzle out, and it'll get to the end of the season, and Toto Wolff will be standing there with his big winner's mug, just be like, yeah, we did a really good job, and we fought really hard, and everything has been tough for us this season.
Steve, that's not what I sound like.
Yeah, sorry, Toto, if you're watching.
Steve, honestly, you
we have stopped recording.
You said porridge for Bottas.
We are still on YouTube.
Yeah, porridge. Calling him porridge.
Where did porridge come from?
Thing because he eats porridge.
Porridge in the morning.
He eats porridge. Yeah.
Oh.
Do you remember?
Chili
Because when they
flakes
said
in porridge.
Yeah. I've pioneered a recipe there. I'm going to open up a food truck and just serve porridge with chili flakes in it, just for fun. But no, wasn't it the Bottas 2.0 thing? And they were like, "What are you doing differently?" He just goes more porridge or something. Yeah, I don't know.
And he grew the beard out as well. That's how he's done it.
Yeah. All he needs to do is just grow a moustache, turn into Nigel Mansell, and win 3 World Drivers' Championships.
Oh, is that all he needs to do, Steve?
Frankly,
is that all he needs to do?
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
No, he just needs to grow his eyebrows and a porn stash, and then he could be Nigel Mansell. And then start, and then fall over, do some dramatic stuff like he used to do at Lotus or whatever.
Yeah. He was quite a paranoid chap, wasn't he? He thought everybody was out to get him. Yeah.
And hit fences really hard and jack his back up a couple times, like he did both in Japan and in Phoenix in '93. So,
oh god.
Yeah, between that, your Toto, Arnold, and then the porridge, and then the egghead rant was outstanding.
I just saw your message, Phil, about not having to.
Thank
talk
you.
About...
Because the thing is, I find it very hard to keep a straight face when you discuss Mazepin, Phil, because it's absolutely brutal, and there's nothing more that I like that I like in the world than somebody who will just go straight for the jugular when they're talking about something. So thank you. I will continue. It's a bit like the Manscaped stuff. It's really hard to keep a straight face in that.
See, now that's done, right? Because I remember, I forget who it was not Louis. Who was Owain? He's like, he's shaking his hand, because I made a joke about Manscaped, and he's like, I guess that's over.
Yeah, we're no longer affiliated with them anymore.
No.
So thank God I don't have to do that again.
That was one of the best parts, because you couldn't get through that read for your life. It was hilarious.
I'm glad I never had to do it. Well, to
2
the same
seconds,
extent.
I'm just going to find another dodgy channel sponsor for you to plug. I'm kidding.
Oh man, because I pre-recorded it. I remember before I did it, I pre-recorded it and I sent it to Jared, and I was like, all right, thank God I never have to do that again. You could just put that in the recording, right? He goes, well, yeah, but I can't do it on the live recording, so you got to do it every time. And for God's sake, you have to do it every time.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was good.
I will say though that if you close your eyes, Toto does sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
They're from the same part of the world, aren't they? From the same
Yeah.
part of
Austria.
Austria.
Yeah,
so.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know.
I remember on BBC's
Yeah.
season review, they asked him just to go, "Hasta la vista, baby," and he sounded exactly like Arnie.
Yeah.
Oh god, I'm happy I didn't do my Christian Horner impression in response though. So there we go.
Come on, Steve, you got to do it now.
Yeah,
Nah,
you've teased it. You've teased it. Those are the rules.
No, what it was just going to be somebody having just a whinge about nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like Christian Horner.
Yeah.
Spot on.
That's just all of Red Bull.
I can do helmet Marco though. You ready?
Go on.
Yeah.
It's like Kimi Räikkönen
Perfect.
as well, to be fair.
No, it's that.
Well, yeah.
That and slagging all of his drivers. That aren't Max Verstappen.
That aren't Max.
Sebastian
Yeah.
Vettel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like-
I saw a statistic that was like the last time a second seat Red Bull driver won a race was Ricciardo, like at Monaco in 2018. And it's like,
Yeah.
you know, they've had a race winning car. It's a fact. They just haven't had, you know, race winning second drivers.
I
Yeah,
don't know about that. It's they made it so that Daniel Ricciardo didn't even want to be there anymore, and then they didn't bother to make a second car. They haven't bothered to make a proper second car since Max became the number one driver. I mean, even when Mark Webber was there, at least they tried. It wasn't hard, but at least they tried for constructors.
Do you reckon it was like a constructive dismissal sort of scenario for Daniel?
Yeah,
like just get him out. Yeah,
they knew that he wasn't going to stick around, and he's a smart enough guy that he's like, I've given all these years to Red Bull. I drove a POS, whatever the heck that was, whatever that car was. The I forget what the name of it was.
The
Hispania, HRT, whatever. Yeah. And then
Hispania Racing Team.
It wasn't a Holden Racing. He would have been better off with a Holden Racing Team car than the HRT. And he had to drive that piece of garbage because they dismissed my boy Karthikeyan. And then he drove the what's it called? The SRT, STR, whatever. S Toro Rosso. And then and then he had to go and get into the Red Bull. He gets one good year, maybe, in 14, and then they start effing things up. And he's like, "Oh, they give everything to Max." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to leave." He's a good enough driver. He's a top 5 driver in this sport, and they weren't willing to give him a good car. I mean, that's insane, and it's why Red Bull's never going to win anything of great significance. Sure, Max Verstappen, if when Lewis retires, could win world championships, but you're not going to compete for constructors when you don't have 2 cars that can compete for it.
Yeah.
That's just fundamental. And they don't make a good second car, and they haven't made a good second car for a long time. It goes all the way back to, like, what's it called? Like, even people accuse Senna of not wanting Derek Warwick. Well, you look at how Lotus was at that point, and they said they were basically only capable of making one good car, and he knew that, and that was why they put the Earl of Dumfries in the second car in '86, and then they put the Satoru Nakajima in the car in '87, because the fact of the matter is they knew they could only make one good car, and it's similar to what Red Bull does now, and that's why they have this terrible driver development garbage too. They're all in Formula E or DTM.
So they need to start charging $1 more per can of Red Bull then. That solution.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Do you think it speaks more now then that about Bottas's performance this season that Red Bull are actually leading both the drivers and constructors championships? Because obviously, as you've just said, they don't care about the second car, and Bottas, as we've seen, is so far off and hasn't had the season that he would. It's a matter of fact, it's his worst start to a season since joining Mercedes.
Bearing in mind, though, he's had 2 DNFs. You could argue neither of them being his fault. Like, Monaco definitely wasn't his fault. That story that Toto spun was just, I don't buy it.
He's like a millimetre off dead center. It's so hard.
But it wasn't good enough. But the Imel crash with George as well was a massive blow to the start of his season, and I don't blame Bottas for that. I don't really blame either of them. It was just a racing incident, and they both behaved like children immediately afterwards. George more so, unfortunately. But yeah, like I think it's hindsight's always 2020. Like, if Bottas had placed in like his usual sort of top 3 position, then they would have control of the Constructors' Championship at least. But that's not the case, and I think that there are little chinks in the armor this year. I think with Mercedes, it's the last year of an incredibly mature set of technical regulations, and I think they'll be desperate to just clean sweep it. And Red Bull, on the other hand, will be desperate to make sure that doesn't happen. Which is why I think there's all these games with the flexi wings and that sort of thing. It's like I said before, they're all just sort of pissing in the wind. At the end of the day, they're just going to hamstring themselves because those technical regulation changes will hurt everyone.
Yeah.
But Red Bull more so than most, because I do think that they are being quite liberal with their interpretation of the flexing under load. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going to happen with it. But yeah,
Haas will become just supremely fast.
Oh yeah,
beat everyone.
Imagine
winning with last year's car, but with a different
20.
Can
you imagine the shock of Gunter Steiner? At the start of the season with this fucking piece of shit car.
Hey, that's pretty good.
And now we are winning.
I think Gunter Steiner might have a heart attack if Haas get a single point this season.
No, that's not.
That's. That's.
Can you imagine
I think
if it's
that's outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Can you imagine if it's Voldemort does it as well? We get a fucking point, and it's this fucking Russian. Like, why can't he be Schumacher?
Now we've got no chance of getting rid of him.
The only chance that they have of scoring a point is if at Sochi somebody parks like a T-80 tank on the track. Which happens to be on the racing line.
It's possible.
The only person who survives is Mazepin. He's just like, oh, my father has put tank on track. I am winning now.
Man, he's on fire. 3 o'clock Steve is on. Oh, man.
3 o'clock Steve is incredibly tired.
3
o'clock Steve is incredibly tired and has a
0 F's to give.
So, and 0 F's to give. I'm going to hurt myself. I can just feel it. So I'm just getting it all out now before I spend 6 weeks in the hospital. I think I think last time I was on, I said Haas won't make it to the end of the season. I'm going to stick to that. I don't think they will. I think it'll be Caterham all over again.
We'll see. I do think it's funny though, the tank thing. Like, I could just imagine like Dmitry Mazepin like turning to Putin in the stands and just go da, and then it just comes out onto the track.
It always annoys me when the cameras cut to him as he walks into like the audience. Like, he always walks in halfway through. It's like he can't even be asked showing up to the event that's in his country.
He's got important KGB meetings to be attending, hasn't he? He's got to be in on that.
Yeah, between that and the shares in the Stolichnaya factory, he's a very busy man. Oh God, I'm not confident that Haas will survive. It'll either be that or they'll get bought out by Daddy Mazepin and
Earl Kelly.
Mr.
Yeah, I can see that. I feel it'll be like Force India in 2018.
They'll just
bought out.
What if they? No, they can't paint them pink. That's not going to go down well in Russia. Not at all.
Give it a rainbow color spread. That would be nice.
Oh my God, yes.
That'd be amazing.
To rub them up the wrong way.
I hope someone mods the F1 2021 so that you can have like the most LGBT Haas car possible, just because I know how much it will piss them off.
You can pretty liberal with it.
They need the same guy who did that track map for the new Abu Dhabi race. where the poster, like the barriers and everything, just say "We race" is one giant human rights violation. So they just need that guy again, and then it's fine. It's basically the same thing, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, the fact that this Williams story, Mazepin tie-up story won't fuck off is quite concerning, because the longer it hangs around, the more I sit there thinking, is this true? Is he coming back? Can he not? Please, can he not?
Yeah.
Can't be. He's got no money.
I mean, yeah,
He's
that's
got
exactly
at least
it. They should know
£800
from
according
before.
to a financial report.
I'd like to think we've all got at least £800. Like, it's not saying much.
But it's sad that I have more wealth than an energy drinks company. I think we all do.
Oh my god.
We could buy them out. We could start a conglomerate and buy them out and get it. That's our foot into Formula One, isn't it?
I mean, I already own a
tie it with a
business.
sneaky Russian, but wow, yeah. I don't know. I'm half expecting that team to be under a different name at the end of the year and run by Boris the Blade from Snatch or something, just like a completely dysfunctional organization.
Bullet Tooth Tony's team principal. Get Vinnie Jones on it. Oh
Wow.
god. What a film.
Just because he dodges bullets, Abby, across the rear wing. Oh dear. Oh dear. I'll love you and leave you guys, because I do need to try and get a couple of hours sleep before I go and impale myself on a tree. So thank you very much for having me on. And if you ever feel like lowering the tone of the recording, you can have me on again.
Oh, you always say this, Steve.
Weekend.
You're great. Come on.
It's all right.
Best impressions.
Yeah, no.
I'll do a whole episode of Toto Wolff, just commenting about other teams, just ripping into them.
I mean, if we didn't have the video part of the podcast, we could pretend that we got Toto Wolff on as a guest.
Yeah, boost the SEO.
Yeah, you have a bunch of. I just got a notification from one of the people that I don't know what, and he's saying how your impressions are like totally killing it, and it's like you have to do them. Like that's the thing. You're all
right.
Yeah, you're like now we have
5 minutes each episode of Toto Wolff
and
complaining about nothing.
And you have to do Steiner as well, because the Gunther Steiner is great. Because what is he? He just says he drops F-bombs and talks about Egghead driving into a wall. Like it's
maybe this is our opportunity to sow some seeds of like disarray in Netflix's recording of Drive to Survive. Just send them audio clips so they hear my dodgy Toto Wolff.
Just pre-race and then just your impression.
Oh god. I could just do Will Buxton sewing like making up like rivalries that just don't exist or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh dear. All right, I will catch you guys. I'm free. I should be available for either or both episodes next weekend, because it's a long weekend. Yay! So I will see you guys then.
Yep.
See you, Steve.
See you, Steve.
All right.
See you, Steve.
I think it might be a good time to stop on the YouTube stuff now, because we've lost a host, and I say lost a host. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah.
I'll start a live stream then. It's fine. Thanks to everybody who's watched and listened along. Thanks for the comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Apart from someone, but
oh no. Oh, okay, we'll talk about it in a